Alright, so now we're at the point where we're going to make the serve. What I usually do after that glue has held, and you can still see with the changing color there, is I'll loosen up this left side of the jig, and I will make sure that this braid, now I can pull on it, is slid over as tight as it can be. And I'll put some tension on it. That's the nice thing about this jig. Stretch it out and lock it back into place. The way that this whole system works is that this braid has a Chinese finger cuff effect. Once you pinch it at the end and put tension on your loop, it pulls. It's the grip of the braid on the mono or on the leader material that actually makes the connection. Everything that we're going to do here is just insurance to make that, start that finger trap. The actual serve has no strength to the leader whatsoever. It just starts the connection of contraction on the other end. So we've got a couple ways that we can make this serve that we're going to do, and the serve is basically just a series of knots or overwraps. This is a bitter winder, which is a bowstring server. Really pretty neat little contraption here. It's got a spool of what would amount to about 10 or 12 pound braid material on it, or serving string. For the sake of discussion here, I'm going to use a little fly tie server. We've got orange line that'll really stand out against what we're doing here. Don't worry about the end of this being frayed. You just want to make sure that the serve that we're going to make does not overwrap the braid and run up onto the leader. Your entire connection needs to stay on top of the braid here. So the first thing we start with is we lay the groundwork for a nail knot. This is always the trickiest part in my book, so I'll try and do it slow. We lay what we're going to use to serve it over top of the leader, and we come backwards. Usually after the second wrap, it will hang by itself. What we're doing is we're wrapping back over this tag end 8 times, because this is going to turn into a nail knot that's going to cinch down against our leader, or against our wraps. So once we have our 8 turns, we take this tag end and we put it to the side. We are now going to make the bulk of our serve, which is going to go from this point over to the end. I'm going to stop because I can trim all this fuzz off later. So I'm going to go over our glue and end just on the other side of this. This is where the bitter winder, which is weighted, once it gets going and it has this notch only on one side, it pushes itself along, and it makes it super easy when you're making these serves. And with the weight of it, it really makes a tight connection. But again, for the sake of display purposes, I'm going to try and use this little fly tire. So once I get it going, I'm going to try not to stop here. So I got lucky and it's headed in the direction I want. You can see it wrap back up on itself. You want it all going in one direction. Okay, looks like we're good again. I'll roll it back up onto the keep it at a little bit of an angle. You sort of run your finger down the back side of it to make sure that it's still going. So I've just crossed over that glue, stopped behind where that frayed knot is, and I'm leaving it hanging. This is pretty tight right here. So what we do now is we're going to take this, we're going to put some pressure on it, we're going to tighten our nail knot against these wraps. And with the bitter winder and the heavier material, you can actually watch these first 8 wraps that are overwrapped turn a different color. They'll turn translucent. I'll get in here a little bit, see if I can put enough pressure on here to make them change color. No, it's just going to snap. So, a little bit. Take my braid scissors, trim this off. Now we need to come back the other way and go back over top of these wraps and back over top of that nail knot, and then we'll secure it again with a nail knot going the other way. Alright, so when we start to come back the other way, what I do is I take about an inch or two of line out of here, and I hand make 1 or 2 wraps the other way. This is one continuous line that's going to go both ways over this. So I've come back about 3 or 4 wraps, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to come back this way, and I want to stop right where we started on this end. Again, I'm going to slide my thumb along it once I get it going, and just keep going till I get to the end. Got to get that rhythm right. About 8 more turns will do it. Okay, I'm right there at the end where I was. So now we're going to need to lay the groundwork for another nail knot to cinch back in the other way. So what I have laying in my kit here is I've just got a double loop of the serving material tied at one end, and I lay this right on the leader, and I make 8 wraps over it. I pull out enough material for my tag end. Take my braid scissors, which are like magic. I take this tag end now, I put it through the loop that I just ran underneath, still holding tension on it. I take the other end and I pull it back through. Again, we're going to cinch that down. Since we're using something real light here, it's going to break, so we snip that off. Again, if you're using the bitter winder and had 10 or 12 pound line on it, you would be able to put enough pressure on there to see it change into a translucent color. I'm going to take my glue one last time, and right halfway on this connection and halfway off, I'm just going to put one dab, and you can see it gets sucked right into those fibers. This Zap Thin CA glue gets absorbed into the Spectra, where a lot of the other glues sit on top of it. This one gets right in there and sticks to it. Sort of partially chemically bonds with that leader material underneath it. Not enough to hold the serve all together, but certainly a good insurance policy. Alright, so we just finished our glue. That's our serve, so we're going to come down here and make it pretty now. Just take our braid scissors, snip this excess off down here, and we're done with the serve. What we've done to start this finger trap connection, as soon as we pull on the loop end, it's going to pull this whole braid tight. This first piece of glue right here is going to start that finger trap connection. If that fails, we have the nail knot that we ended our serve with that's going to start that connection. If that fails, we have this double set of wraps that is going to start that connection. If that fails, we have this first nail knot we started with underneath there, and if that fails, we have the original drop of glue that we put on here. So we basically have a 5 times insurance policy that this braid is going to cinch down on this mono, which is going to make this connection a 100% connection. There's no knots to fail in here. It's a totally different animal. You can shorten this insertion. If you can make a good serve, you can have a 12-inch insertion and have 100% line strength in here, which is what we do for a lot of our casting leaders. I've got another foot or so, or 2 feet on there, just for the added insurance of that extra connection. So the only thing we have left is we have our little piece of mono sticking out the end here. I just pull this braid up a couple inches so I know it'll be buried. Snip the end off, run my fingers back over it, and it gets buried inside the end. So I'm going to take this thing out. Starting at the leader end, we've got just the bare mono, 6 feet, our serve, and then about a 3-foot insertion with our loop at the end.